Chapter 1. At the crack of dawn, Yang Kai woke up. After washing his face and rinsing his mouth, he took a broom from the corner of the room and walked out of the room. He stood at the door and stretched his body. He glanced at the white dawn on the horizon and closed his eyes to enjoy a moment of peace. Then, he opened his eyes and waved the broom in his hand, burying himself in cleaning the dust and fallen leaves on the ground. He was dressed in a green robe that was simple and clean. The plain white robe made the young man look a few years older. Yang Kai's back was as straight as a javelin. Even though he was doing the lowest level of work, his expression was meticulous. His movements were calm and steady. He didn't use much strength to hold the broom, and his body didn't even move much. Just by the movement of his wrist, the broom was like an extension of his arm. As he moved, the dust and debris on the ground magically moved as if they had grown two legs. Yang Kai was a trial disciple of High Heaven Pavilion. 3 years ago, he entered the sect and began to cultivate. Until now, he had only reached the tempered body 3rd stage. His fellow apprentices who had entered the sect at the same time as him had long since surpassed this stage. Each of them had their own opportunities and were able to achieve meteoric success under the tutelage of those who had entered the sect. 3 years of tempered body 3rd stage. This kind of talent could no longer be described as ordinary. It could even be described as mediocre. Without any other choice, Yang Kai could only accept a job as a floor sweeper in the sect. While maintaining his livelihood, he bitterly cultivated. High Heaven Pavilion was a rather special sect. This was reflected in the cruelty of the competition between the disciples. In this sect, those with ability would be promoted while those without ability would be eliminated. The law of the jungle was vividly demonstrated in High Heaven Pavilion. In other sects, there may be some friendship between fellow disciples, but in High Heaven Pavilion there was none. If you want to climb up, you have to step on the shoulders of those so-called brothers and brothers. Only by stepping over their blood would you be qualified. High Heaven Pavilion's strict rules were well known throughout the Great Han Dynasty. Although it wasn't considered a super large sect, the cruelty of the competition between the disciples was second to none. It was also because of this that the disciples were all intrepid, and few people dared to provoke them when they traveled the Jianghu. High Heaven Pavilion had a rule. Disciples under the age of 14, no matter who they were from the time they entered the sect, they would have to spend 3 years as a trial period. During these 3 years, food, lodging, and transportation were all taken care of by the sect. The disciples only had to focus on cultivation. If one could break through to the tempered body stage within 3 years, one would be qualified to become a disciple of one of the sect's experts. Of course, one could choose not to become a disciple of one of the sect's experts and cultivate on their own. However, on the path of cultivation, there was a huge difference between the guidance of a good teacher and the exploration of one's own path. To some extent, High Heaven Pavilion's rules were somewhat liberal. As for those who did not break through the body tempering stage within 3 years, they would either leave the sect or be demoted to a trial disciple. That was Yang Kai's current identity as a trial disciple. It was also the disgrace of High Heaven Pavilion. Unlike ordinary disciples, trial disciples had a much harsher living environment. After reaching this step, they had to take care of their own food, clothing, housing, and transportation. The sect would not waste any more cultivation resources on them. Once they were demoted to a trial disciple, they would never be able to see the light of day again. Unless their strength greatly increased in a short period of time, the sect felt that they had the capital to invest in them. In the entire High Heaven Pavilion, there were 3,000 disciples, but how many trial disciples were there? Not more than 10. Yang Kai was fortunate enough to be one of them. For trial disciples to survive in High Heaven Pavilion was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. For example, Yang Kai currently lived in a small hut. It was built by himself, piece by piece. There were several holes in the small roof, but he did not have time to fix them. When it rained, the inside of the hut would be flooded with water. His clothes were bought by himself, the food he ate was his own, and he was responsible for everything. Even the location of his hut was in the most remote part of High Heaven Pavilion that no one cared about. Such terrible treatment, most people would not be able to bear it. This was also the reason why there were so few trial disciples in High Heaven Pavilion. Basically, after the trial period, those who did not break through to the tempered body stage would choose to leave High Heaven Pavilion. However, Yang Kai had chosen to stay. He had already been swept out of the door once, so how could he do the same again? A few months ago, after being demoted to a trial disciple, Yang Kai took on a job as a floor sweeper to maintain his livelihood. It could be said that Yang Kai was now both a trial disciple of High Heaven Pavilion and a floor sweeper of High Heaven Pavilion. However, this floor sweeper job was sometimes unable to maintain Yang Kai's food and clothing. From time to time, he would be hungry and full, and no one would care about his cold. His days were bleak and miserable. Even so, Yang Kai did not want to give up. In life, he had chosen this path, so he would continue to walk it. Giving up halfway was not a man's conduct. Yang Kai had a tenacity that would not turn back until he hit the southern wall. As the sky gradually brightened, Yang Kai swept the floor for a while. Wherever he passed, it was clean and dusty. Although sweeping the floor didn't take much effort, after moving so early in the morning without eating or drinking, Yang Kai's whole body was covered in sweat. This had nothing to do with his strength, it was entirely because his physique was too poor. Out of 3 meals, 2 of them would be hungry. No matter who lived in Yang Kai's environment, their physique would not be good. Gradually, some of the High Heaven Pavilion's disciples gathered around him. These disciples had all gotten up early in the morning, but instead of cultivating, they gathered around Yang Kai. Many of them were looking at Yang Kai with great interest, and some of them even had greedy eyes. It was as if Yang Kai was a naked beauty, a fragrant piece of cake. Among these High Heaven Pavilion disciples who had gathered around Yang Kai, there was also a tense competitive atmosphere spreading. They vigilantly looked at their brothers and sisters, each of them with an unkind expression. Some people in the crowd couldn't bear it and whispered, "So many people, it's a bit too much." Someone immediately replied, "If you think there's a lot of people, you can leave, no one wants you to stay." This one sentence made that person speechless. Everyone knew why they were gathered here and why they were staring at Yang Kai. Now, they were all waiting for that moment to arrive. The time limit was almost up, so wouldn't it be a pity to leave now? If they could take the lead, then today's harvest would be another big gain. Yang Kai was naturally aware of the movements around him, but his expression never changed. He had to experience this kind of situation once every 5 days, 6 times a month, so there really wasn't anything to be surprised about. Moreover, the number of people in front of him was slightly less, probably because not all of them had arrived. Therefore, he continued to sweep the floor, not caring about the people around him, sweeping as he walked. As time passed, more and more people gathered around Yang Kai, roughly estimating that there were at least 30 to 40 people. Yang Kai suddenly stopped and sat in the middle of the road. He slowly breathed in, recovering the physical strength he had exhausted early in the morning. Seeing this, the people gathered around Yang Kai immediately spread out, surrounding him in the middle. The tense competitive atmosphere suddenly rose to a new level, as if even the air was no longer flowing. No one was pleasing to the eye, but they all looked at Yang Kai with incomparable expectation. If someone who didn't know the truth saw this scene, they would probably think that the person in the middle of the crowd was a peerless expert. Otherwise, why would so many people be dispatched to deal with him? But in reality, Yang Kai was only a trial disciple at the 3rd layer of the body tempering realm. Everyone present was stronger than Yang Kai. "Kai Yang, don't waste your time. Just obediently wait for us to beat you up, wouldn't that save everyone a lot of time?" Some people saw Kai Yang's expression and immediately said disdainfully, "Why would a trifling 3rd layer of the body tempering realm need to recover? Since he was going to lose anyway, he might as well be straightforward. Why struggle at death's door?" That's right. Yang Kai, you should at least empathize with the feelings of your fellow brothers. We're not like you. After this fight, we still have to go cultivate. These words made it seem as if Yang Kai should be quickly defeated by them. It made it seem as if Yang Kai recovering his physical strength was disrespectful to them. Yang Kai turned a deaf ear to these words, like an old monk in meditation. Time continued to pass. Suddenly, A melodious sound of a bell rang out. It was the morning bell of High Heaven Pavilion. The sound of the bell entered everyone's ears, and the disciples surrounding Yang Kai were shocked. The bell rang 9 times and the sun rose from the east. It was a new day. Everyone's breathing suddenly calmed down, and they anxiously looked at Yang Kai, who was surrounded in the middle. Yang Kai slowly got up, raised the broom in his hand, and faintly swept his eyes over the people around him. "Pick me, Brother Yang," someone loudly shouted. "I'll be very gentle, I guarantee you won't feel any pain." "Bullshit. Pick me and I'll give you a quick death. I'll end it with 1 punch and I definitely won't waste anyone's time. Pick me, pick me." The scene was very noisy. It was like a market where vendors were promoting the vegetables in their fields and competing to see who was the freshest. "Yang Kai, don't break the rules you set," someone reminded him. Yang Kai chuckled and casually threw the broom in his hand into the air. Dozens of pairs of eyes looked up, full of expectation, waiting for the broom to fall to the ground. In their hearts, they kept praying, "Pick me, pick me." Time seemed to slow down. The broom spun a few times in the air and immediately fell to the ground, where it stopped moving. The tip of the broom pointed towards a tall and sturdy youth in the crowd. A sigh of regret sounded, full of resentment and unwillingness. On the contrary, the tall and sturdy youth laughed and walked out of the crowd, clasping his hands and smiling at the crowd. "Brothers, I've won today's battle, I hope you won't blame me." Fuck dog shit luck. Some people were jealous. "Why can't you pick me? I come here once every 5 days, and I've been here for a whole month." "Yang Kai, you did it on purpose, didn't you?" "Don't mention it, I've been here for 3 months, and I haven't been picked even once." "Brother, you're worse than me." Not bad, just watch the show." The two brothers looked at each other and smiled knowingly. In the field, the others had already dispersed, leaving only Yang Kai and the tall and sturdy youth looking at each other. Trial Disciple Yang Kai, Body Tempering Stage 3. Yang Kai looked at the tall and sturdy youth. Ordinary Disciple Zhou Dingjun, Body Tempering Stage 5. The tall and sturdy youth introduced himself. High Heaven Pavilion's disciples were also divided into different levels. From bottom to top, they were Trial Disciples, Ordinary Disciples, Head Disciples, Elite Disciples, and Core Disciples. Zhou Dingjun said he was an ordinary disciple, which meant that he had not yet been accepted into the sect and had not yet received guidance from a good teacher. If he broke through the body tempering stage and was accepted into the sect, he would be considered a head disciple. The elite disciples of the next level were all outstanding and were selected from the disciples under the sect leader. As for the core disciples, they were the hope of High Heaven Pavilion's next generation. The sect treated these people as future successors. The awe-inspiring disciple ranking system seemed unreasonable, but it was very good at stimulating the competitive spirit of the young people. This was also the foundation of High Heaven Pavilion's cruel system. The fundamental reason why Yang Kai was being fought over by so many people was because of another rule of High Heaven Pavilion, the challenge rule. Chapter 2. High Heaven Pavilion's first rule. Every High Heaven Pavilion disciple has the opportunity to challenge a disciple once per day, and every 5 days they have the opportunity to be challenged once per day. In a battle, the strength of both sides cannot be more than 3 levels apart. No one is allowed to avoid the battle, no one is allowed to cower, and no one is allowed to violate this rule. The winning side will be awarded a corresponding amount of contribution points based on the opponent's level, while the losing side will be deducted a corresponding amount of contribution points based on their own level. Contribution points, also known as sect contribution points. This was a special feature of High Heaven Pavilion. Simply put, contribution points were equivalent to money in High Heaven Pavilion. As long as one had enough contribution points, they could be exchanged for anything they wanted from the sect's logistics department. Pills, manuals, weapons, armors, anything related to cultivation, they could be exchanged for. Of course, they could also be exchanged for gold and silver, but generally speaking, sect contribution points were hard to come by, so most disciples were reluctant to exchange them for gold and silver. There were also many ways to obtain sect contribution points, such as turning in one's own treasures to the sect, or completing tasks given by the sect, etc. One of the most common and simplest ways to obtain sect contribution points was through challenges. Challenging a disciple whose strength was less than 3 levels lower than one's own would give them contribution points. That was why so many people had gathered around Yang Kai so early in the morning. Everyone knew how to pinch a soft persimmon. Yang Kai's name could be considered famous in High Heaven Pavilion, not only because he carried the status of a trial disciple, but also because he had never tasted a single victory since entering High Heaven Pavilion. Every time he was challenged, the result was always a loss. Those who paid attention naturally remembered the last time Yang Kai had been challenged. Today was the 5th day since then, so according to the sect's rules, he could be challenged again. Who wouldn't be envious of the contribution points that could be obtained so easily? Although winning against Yang Kai didn't give them much contribution points, a mosquito was still meat. What's more, the disciples who would challenge Yang Kai weren't rich or noble, so naturally they wouldn't complain about a trivial amount of contribution points. In the middle of the field, Yang Kai and Zhou Dingjun had already taken up their stances and said in unison, "Please advise." That being said, everyone knew that Yang Kai was going to get a good beating today. As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Kai took the initiative to attack. His thin and weak body exploded with amazing fighting strength. He took a step forward and punched Zhou Dingjun's chest. His attack was simple and direct. His fist was like a tiger that created wind, as if all his strength was poured into it. This fist technique was the long fist technique that every High Heaven Pavilion disciple practiced. This fist technique wasn't profound, it was only used to strengthen the body of the disciples, so the moves were naturally very simple. Zhou Dingjun didn't panic and had a smile on his face. It was because his cultivation level was 2 levels higher than Yang Kai's, so there was no suspense in this battle. When Yang Kai's fist was about to hit him, he turned his body as if he was taking a stroll in the park. His tall and sturdy body seemed to be somewhat agile at this moment. His fist brushed past Zhou Dingjun's clothes and did not hurt him at all. Not waiting for Yang Kai to retract his fist, Zhou Dingjun's elbow hit Yang Kai's forearm. At the same time, he slightly raised his knee and hit Yang Kai's abdomen. Yang Kai let out a muffled groan as he endured the excruciating pain and hurriedly retreated, narrowly avoiding Zhou Dingjun's third attack. Ha! Zhou Dingjun was surprised. He didn't expect that his brother, who was only at tempered body 3rd stage, would be able to predict his next move. His plan to defeat him in one fell swoop was disrupted. But this small mistake didn't affect the overall situation. Zhou Dingjun's thoughts changed, and he followed like a shadow. He wanted to take advantage of Yang Kai's respite to end this battle. But just as he moved, the retreating Yang Kai suddenly pounced on him. The two figures quickly closed in. Zhou Dingjun saw the unyielding and high fighting spirit in Yang Kai's eyes. Yang Kai clenched his fist and threw another punch. Oh no! Zhou Dingjun's heart skipped a beat. He knew that he had fallen into his opponent's trap. Although his strength was higher than his brother's by 2 stages, his battle experience was not as good. But, so what if he fell into his trap? Zhou Dingjun's aura was as deep as the abyss. He no longer dodged and returned the favor with a punch. With 2 light bangs, Yang Kai was sent flying. Zhou Dingjun's body swayed, but he still stood there with a dignified expression. If this attack had been launched by an opponent of the same level, the one who would have been sent flying would definitely have been him. Others may not know the secret behind these 2 punches, but he could feel it clearly. This senior brother's fist was actually a bit faster than his own. In other words, he hit him first, and only then did he hit him. But his punch was not as strong as his own. Furthermore, he had a strong body. On the other hand, his opponent was as thin as firewood. His face was as pale as a vegetable. It was obvious that he was malnourished. His resistance was not on the same level, which led to this result. Brother Yi, thank you for letting me win. Zhou Dingjun did not feel good. Being hit first by an opponent who was 2 stages behind was not something to be proud of. Although he had won this battle, he still felt that it was not a good win. Whispers came from the side. This guy thinks he's won? Haha, Could it be that he has never heard of Yang Kai's name and came to challenge him? This is really interesting. Zhou Dingjun raised his eyebrows. He really did not know Yang Kai very well. He had only heard about this brother from others. Today, when he passed by, he saw many people gathered around, so he joined in. He did not expect that his luck would be so good and he would be chosen as his opponent by Yang Kai. But didn't this mean that he had won? He had sent this brother flying with one punch. He already had an overwhelming advantage. According to the rules of the sect, his opponent should have admitted defeat because there was no need to continue fighting. Again, while she was thinking, Kai Yang, who had been sent flying, had unexpectedly stood up. His eyes didn't show the slightest sign of discouragement. Instead, his fighting spirit had become even stronger. After being struck by that fist, his originally emaciated face had become slightly pale. Without waiting for Zhou Dingjun to answer, Yang Kai rushed over again. When he was less than 3 feet away from Zhou Dingjun, his body suddenly sprung up and his legs swept out like a whip towards Zhou Dingjun's lower body. It was also a basic skill that every High Heaven Pavilion disciple had practiced. But at this moment, when Yang Kai used it, many of the disciples who were much higher than him were able to understand it. It turned out that the whip kick could be used like this. Without waiting for the crowd to sigh, Yang Kai was sent flying again. The difference between the two realms and the difference in their physical attributes made it impossible for Kai Yang to compete with Zhou Dingjun. Zhou Dingjun's punch landed on Yang Kai's calf. When Yang Kai stood up again, his footsteps were slightly staggered. It was obvious that his bones had been injured. Again, Yang Kai clenched his teeth, his eyes burning with a raging fire. Ping! Yang Kai was sent flying. Again! Ping! Yang Kai was sent flying again. Some people who couldn't bear to watch had already left, while others sighed. This Yang Kai's tenacity is really beyond words. Every time he challenges someone, he will definitely not give up until he's knocked out. When these words reached Zhou Dingjun's ears, he couldn't help but feel bitter. He didn't expect that he would challenge such a crazy opponent. Kai Yang was sent flying 7 or 8 times. His cheeks were swollen, and even his eye sockets were black. He staggered forward, looking like he would be blown away by the wind, but he was still as stubborn as a rock. Wherever he fell, he would pick himself up, shout, and continue to charge forward. After repeating this, Zhou Dingjun's face finally changed. Are you crazy? If you don't admit defeat, you'll die. Chapter 3. High Heaven Pavilion disciples fought amongst each other and many died every year, but when Zhou Dingjun looked at his brother, who bravely charged forward without flinching, he couldn't help but feel slightly alarmed. If he were in Yang Kai's shoes, Zhou Dingjun wouldn't be able to do such a thing. Perhaps he would have already admitted defeat. Where there is life, there is hope. This was the way of life. Not turning back until you hit the south wall, this was a kind of persistence. Seeing Yang Kai's sorry figure, but the fighting spirit in his eyes was growing stronger and stronger, Zhou Dingjun knew that if he didn't knock him out, today's matter wouldn't be over. Thinking of this, Zhou Dingjun waved his hand and chopped down on Yang Kai's neck. Yang Kai's fierce momentum suddenly dissipated, his eyes lost focus, and his body softly fell to the ground. Seeing this scene, a person standing on the top of a large tree took out a small booklet and flipped it open to read. Trial Disciple Yang Kai vs Ordinary Disciple Zhou Dingjun, Zhou Dingjun. The person standing on the top of the tree had a graceful figure, obviously a woman, but her face was covered by a black veil, making it impossible to see her face. However, her delicate eyebrows showed that she wasn't very old, and the fallen leaf armband she wore on her arm showed her identity. High Heaven Pavilion's Dark Hall Disciple. High Heaven Pavilion's Dark Hall was a special organization under the jurisdiction of the sect's third elder. The Dark Hall disciples were responsible for recording all matters in the sect, including the results of duels between disciples. Therefore, if one wanted to challenge someone in High Heaven Pavilion, they didn't need to worry about not being able to earn contribution points. The Dark Hall disciples hidden in the shadows would record their results and summarize them every month. After the Dark Hall woman finished recording the results of this battle, she took out an even smaller booklet from her waist and opened it to take a look. On it was written, He 14, May 7th, Kai Yang's 147th battle, defeat. Excluding this new line of words, the booklet densely recorded the results of all of Yang Kai's battles. All of them were recorded at the same time, and the results could only be summed up in one word: defeat. Losing 147 matches in a row without a single victory, this could be said to be the one and only High Heaven Pavilion's record since its inception. This record was enough to shock the heavens and make the gods weep. It was unprecedented, and the creator of this record was currently lying quietly on the ground, not knowing whether he was dead or alive. Yang Kai had never challenged anyone before. These 147 matches were all challenges from others. In other words, he was challenged once every 5 days. This had been going on for more than 2 years. Looking down at Yang Kai, Xianxia frowned. She didn't understand why Yang Kai would persist to this extent. He had already been demoted to High Heaven Pavilion's trial disciple, and even his own survival was a problem, so why was he still staying in High Heaven Pavilion? If he left this place, his life would definitely be much better. What kind of stubbornness did this frail youth have in his heart? This allowed him to lose 147 matches in a row without being discouraged. Perhaps this was the stupidity of men? Noticing Yang Kai was also a coincidence. As a Dark Hall disciple, Xianxia was assigned to monitor this area of the territory. Every time Yang Kai was challenged, every time he was knocked unconscious, she had seen it all. Once or twice was nothing, but after so many times, Xianxia began to pay attention to this youth who was only at body tempering 3rd stage. She really wanted to know, with his perseverance, how long would he persist before leaving High Heaven Pavilion. This kind of aptitude, this kind of cultivation speed, was simply not suitable to stay in this world of Jianghu. The world of ordinary people was his home. Below, the crowd had already dispersed, leaving only Yang Kai lying unconscious on the ground. People came and went, and time passed. Xianxia's figure flickered and disappeared from the treetops. When Yang Kai woke up again, it was already late in the morning. From head to toe, there was no part of his body that didn't hurt. Staggering to get up, Yang Kai looked around and found that he was no longer in the place where he had fainted, but rather under the shade of a nearby tree. This was really strange. Could it be that one of his brothers was so kind as to carry him here? This was something that had never happened before. Yang Kai frowned and scratched his head. He vaguely remembered a hazy figure swaying in front of his eyes. But this memory was too vague. No matter how he thought about it, he couldn't remember clearly. But between where he was standing and where he had fainted, there was a very clear drag mark, and this mark was clearly caused by someone dragging a person along the ground. When he felt his back again, he immediately felt a burning pain coming from it. Yang Kai was stunned for a moment, and then immediately became angry. The trace of goodwill he had for this benefactor who had done a good deed but didn't leave his name disappeared in an instant. This person must have directly dragged him from there. Otherwise, how could the skin on his back be scraped and bruised? It would have been better to just leave him there and not care. Yang Kai thought in his heart. While feeling depressed, Yang Kai suddenly found that his right hand seemed to be holding something. Puzzled, he looked down and saw a small porcelain bottle in his hand. What was this? This porcelain bottle was definitely not his. Yang Kai didn't have anything on him, besides a set of clothes and a broom. Where would he get this? The small porcelain bottle had a label on it, and on the label there were words. Yang Kai looked at it and muttered, "Blood coagulation cream." Blood coagulation cream. Yang Kai knew what it was. This was the cream that High Heaven Pavilion used to treat external injuries. Although it wasn't a peerless medicine, it had a significant effect on external injuries. Generally, every disciple would carry a bottle with them at all times in case of an accident. And such a bottle of cream was not cheap in High Heaven Pavilion's logistics department. 10 sect contribution points for a bottle. How many sect contribution points could Yang Kai get in a month of sweeping? It was a trivial 10 sect contribution points. In other words, the value of this bottle of cream was equivalent to Yang Kai sweeping for a month. Who was it? At this moment, Yang Kai couldn't help but feel a fierce surge of emotion in his heart, and the pain in his back suddenly lessened by a lot. He had been in High Heaven Pavilion for 3 years, and in these 3 years, Yang Kai had become accustomed to the fickleness of the sect's disciples. But today, someone had actually left a bottle of blood coagulation cream for him after he was injured. This kind of action deeply touched Yang Kai. It turned out that not all of the sect's disciples were heartless people. Perhaps, such a bottle of cream for external injuries was nothing to that person, but for Yang Kai, it was what he needed the most right now. There was a saying that a drop of water would be unforgettable, and in the future, he would repay it with a gushing spring. Yang Kai was moved as he tried to recall that figure, but it became more and more blurry. On the contrary, a faint fragrance lingered at the tip of his nose, not dissipating for a long time. This medicine is actually fragrant? Yang Kai suddenly opened his eyes. Calming his mood, he straightened his clothes and carefully put away the bottle of blood coagulation cream. Yang Kai picked up the broom in his hand and continued his sweeping work. Sweeping inside and out, he busied himself until noon, when he finally finished his work for the day. Dragging his tired and hungry body, Yang Kai returned to his room. The injuries from the morning fight had not yet been dealt with, so although Yang Kai was hungry, he could only endure and treat his injuries first. Taking off his blue clothes, Yang Kai brought a basin of water to wash his body. If someone were to see the state of Yang Kai's body, they would definitely be shocked. Yang Kai's body was very weak and thin. His ribs were clearly visible, and his whole body didn't seem to have much meat. But on this malnourished body, there were bruises everywhere, scars everywhere, and almost no part of his body was intact. Every 5 days he would be challenged, and every time he would be defeated. Every time he would be knocked unconscious. His old injuries had not yet healed, but new ones were added. If it was anyone else, they probably wouldn't be able to endure this kind of pain, but Yang Kai endured it. Not only did he endure it, but he also cultivated and swept the floor every day, not at all affected by these injuries. Chapter 4. After washing his body, Kai Yang picked up the bottle of blood coagulation cream. Placing it under his nose, he gently sniffed it. Discovering that this medicine was indeed fragrant, he couldn't help but feel refreshed, shaking his head. Opening the bottle cap, Yang Kai took out some of the ointment from the bottle and was about to apply it to his wound when he suddenly paused and hurriedly went to fetch a bowl of water. Placing the ointment on his finger into the water, he carefully stirred it before using the diluted liquid medicine to treat his wound. Although the blood clotting cream had a good effect on external injuries, after being diluted, its function would be greatly reduced. But Yang Kai only had 1 bottle of cream, so he naturally had to use it sparingly. After the bowl of medicine was consumed, Yang Kai finally finished treating his wound. But what made him somewhat puzzled was that the smell of the blood clotting cream was somewhat different from before. Not only was it not fragrant, it was somewhat spicy. Putting on his clothes, Yang Kai picked up a piece of black-baked sweet potato from the stove and gulped it down. Then he fell into bed and fell into a deep sleep. There were a few holes in the roof, and the light that shone in brightly lit the room. The furnishings in the room were extremely simple. There was only 1 bed, and there wasn't even a table or a chair. Even the bed only had a deerskin bedding the size of a table and a square black stone pillow. This was all Yang Kai had. The deerskin quilt was made from a deer that Yang Kai had hunted. Although it was not thick, it was just enough to keep out the cold. The black stone pillow was picked up by Yang Kai when he left High Heaven Pavilion and went hunting in the Black Wind Mountain Range. This black stone was square, 1 foot long, and 3 fingers thick. It looked like a stone, but it didn't feel like a stone, nor did it have the weight of a stone. Yang Kai didn't know what it was, but in any case, it was perfect for a pillow, so he didn't dwell on it. Yang Kai had been using this black stone pillow for more than a year. He didn't know if it was an illusion or not, but it always made him feel good to sleep. In his sleep, Yang Kai dreamed of today's battle. Time and time again he was sent flying by junior brother Zhou Dingjun, but time and time again he stood up. His heart was filled with unyielding perseverance, and his chest was filled with blood. As the dream continued, the blood in his chest became more and more violent. In his sleep, Yang Kai's face was filled with pain, but his expression was firm. His heart was filled with perseverance. Even if his feet were treading a mountain of blades and his body was burning in a sea of fire, he would not be afraid. In his sleep, Yang Kai didn't notice that the black stone pillow under his head was emitting a deep light. With the ups and downs of Yang Kai's mood, this light became brighter and brighter. In his dream, Yang Kai continued with his early morning encounter. He was repeatedly knocked to the ground by Zhou Dingjun, but when he stood up for the 1000th time, the unyielding perseverance in his heart suddenly broke out. He rushed forward and ruthlessly knocked Zhou Dingjun down. The moment Zhou Dingjun fell to the ground, his appearance blurred and turned into his own appearance. At this moment, Yang Kai's mood calmed down. It wasn't because he had defeated his opponent in his dream, but because he had defeated himself. He had defeated his heart's cowardice and submission. A faint feeling arose spontaneously, as if there was nothing in the world that could make him submit. In reality, the black stone pillow under Yang Kai's head suddenly erupted with a black light. This black light spun and emerged from the black stone. It swayed a few times in the air, and then drilled into Yang Kai's head through the Baihui acupoint and disappeared in an instant. At the same time, a desolate and ancient barbaric aura descended. It was like the tide of the sea, the power of the avalanche. In front of this aura, anyone would be so insignificant. Yang Kai suddenly opened his eyes. His whole body was dripping with sweat, and there was a lingering fear in his heart. He was awakened by that aura. After calming down, Yang Kai gave a hollow laugh. It was a bit ridiculous that he could scare himself in a dream. He rubbed his face and judged the time through the light on the roof. He was a bit annoyed. He had slept for 2 hours, and it was almost evening. He hurriedly got up and lifted the deerskin quilt, carefully folded it, and then adjusted the position of the black stone pillow. Just as he was about to get out of bed, Yang Kai frowned and turned his head to look at the black stone pillow in a daze. It felt like the texture was different. Puzzled, Yang Kai reached out and picked up the black stone pillow. He weighed it in his hand and found that it was indeed different. This thing was much lighter. Strange, how could a stone suddenly become lighter? Yang Kai casually tossed it up and down. This toss suddenly threw out a problem. It was like a thick book was thrown in the air, and the pages of the book fell apart. Yang Kai was stunned and forgot to reach out to catch it. With a bang, the black stone pillow fell to the ground. Yang Kai still couldn't believe it. He was surprised to find that the black stone pillow was actually spread out on the ground like a book. Wasn't this a stone? How did it suddenly become a book? Yang Kai had been using the black stone pillow for more than a year. Yang Kai was very clear about what it looked like. Before, he didn't find out that it was a book. How come today the old turtle took off its shell and turned into a snake? After a long time, Yang Kai bent down and picked up the black book. The moment he touched it, Yang Kai's heart gave birth to a feeling of compatibility. After carefully looking through it, Yang Kai had to admit that this black stone pillow was really a book. Thick book cover, thick book pages. But what made people speechless was that this black book didn't have a single word recorded. It was empty. Moreover, the texture of this book page made Yang Kai unable to see through it. He gently tore it with his hand, but unexpectedly he couldn't tear it. This was really interesting. He had been using it for more than a year, but only today did he know its true appearance. But what was the use of such a wordless black book? Yang Kai turned around to look, but found nothing. Unknowingly, Kai Yang flipped to the first page. Unable to believe this, he angrily stared at the empty page. After a moment of effort, Yang Kai was surprised to find that the page in front of him had changed a little. While he was concentrating, the wild aura that had just descended in his sleep appeared again. A line of large golden characters gradually appeared in front of Yang Kai's eyes. With the blood as the guide, the golden body descends. Divine power fails, the golden body is indestructible. This aura rushed straight to his heart. Yang Kai suddenly closed the black book. His hands and feet couldn't help but tremble. He took a few deep breaths, calming down a little. What kind of secret was hidden in this black book? Yang Kai didn't know. Yang Kai only knew that this thing that he picked up in the Black Wind Mountain range was likely to have a great origin. After a long silence, Yang Kai once again opened the black book. This time, he saw the lines of large golden characters on the first page. So, it wasn't a dream. Gradually, several other lines of characters slowly appeared. Unyielding golden body, the Overlord's bar, the unyielding soul, can descend. 8 lines and 32 words took up an entire page. It gave people a feeling of supremacy, as if those words were filled with a dense and domineering aura. Chapter 5. The meaning of these 32 words was very easy to understand, so Yang Kai naturally understood. However, the origin of the Black Book was unclear, which made Yang Kai somewhat afraid. What if this was a trap? Thinking of this, Yang Kai couldn't help but laugh. He was now just a trial disciple of High Heaven Pavilion, who would waste time to deal with him. However, from the literal meaning of the last few lines, the reason why the black stone pillow transformed into the Black Book was most likely related to his dream today. He had slept on it for more than a year without any change, but today it had turned into a Black Book, which was inseparable from the change in his mood in his dream. It was because of his own change that the black stone pillow transformed. Since he was the one who facilitated the birth of the Black Book, then this Black Book was born because of him. He was the master of this Black Book. Thinking of this, Yang Kai no longer hesitated. The words on the Black Book clearly required him to drip his blood as a guide. Holding the idea of giving it a try, Yang Kai put his hand into his mouth and fiercely bit down, then stretched his finger towards the first page of the Black Book. The blood dripped down. At first there was no change, but as time passed, the Black Book began to emit a layer of black light. Yang Kai's body was not good, and today he was injured first, so after tossing and turning he began to feel a little dizzy. However, Yang Kai clenched his teeth and endured. His blood continued to flow, but the light on the page grew stronger and stronger. After a full cup of tea worth of time, Yang Kai almost fainted on the ground. The page began to change substantially. The black light began to wriggle and shrink, and in the middle of the page, a small vortex appeared. Immediately after, a golden light appeared in the vortex. Yang Kai struggled to keep his mind clear as he stared at the movement in front of him. In the middle of the black vortex, a shiny, round, golden thing gradually rose up. Yang Kai was shocked. There really was something on this page. Although when he decided to drip his blood, Yang Kai had some expectations, he didn't think it would really succeed. But now, everything in front of him showed that the 32 words on the page were not fake. Dripping blood as a guide, the golden body descends. What kind of golden body is it? Yang Kai's pale face was full of expectation. After a while, when the shiny and round thing completely appeared in front of Yang Kai couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. No matter how rich his imagination was, he never thought that the golden body would look like this. This was a golden skeleton that was only about half a foot tall, and the first thing to shine was the skull of this skeleton. The golden skeleton floated above the pages of the Black Book and sat cross-legged. It was clear that it was meditating. Each of its bones exuded a golden light, illuminating Yang Kai's hut in a dazzling light. The black vortex on the page gradually disappeared, and everything returned to normal. Yang Kai didn't know what to do when he saw the bizarre appearance of the golden skeleton. The book only mentioned how to make the golden body descend, but it did not mention what to do with it after it had descended. Looking at it, Yang Kai suddenly felt that something was wrong. The golden skeleton in front of him clearly had no eyes, but Yang Kai felt that it seemed to be sizing him up. It also clearly had no mouth, but it seemed to be mocking him for being weak. Realizing this, Yang Kai was furious and tried to grab the golden skeleton. Just a little skeleton, how dare it be so arrogant? Who would have thought that as soon as he made a move, the golden skeleton flew over and directly passed through Yang Kai's hand and imprinted on Yang Kai's chest. This was a very shocking scene. A skeleton hit Yang Kai's body, and then the golden light shone brightly. The golden skeleton directly turned into little fluorescent lights and penetrated into Yang Kai's body through his pores. In an instant, pain spread all over his body. This kind of pain was not ordinary pain, but pain that came from the depths of his bones. Yang Kai screamed and fell to the ground, his body bent like a shrimp and spasmed. All the bones in his body seemed to have been shattered in an instant. Yang Kai didn't even have the strength to move a finger. This was not an illusion. If Yang Kai could look inside his body, he would see that his bones were really shattered. Next to each broken bone, there was a layer of golden light that constantly repaired the broken bones. However, the speed of repair was far slower than the speed of destruction. As soon as the repair was completed, they were shattered again. Human bones were wrapped in bone marrow, and in bone marrow were nerves. Any small touch could cause great damage. It was easy to imagine how much suffering Yang Kai was suffering at this moment. It wasn't that a single bone in his body was broken, but that there was not a single bone in his body that was intact. If it was someone else, even if their strength was thousands of times higher than Yang Kai's, they would probably have fainted at this moment. However, Yang Kai did not. The severe pain made his mind clearer, and the price for this was that the pain he felt was magnified thousands of times. Tragic screams came from the hut. Not far away, the High Heaven Pavilion disciples who were walking were frightened and hurriedly fled. In the dark, Yang Kai seemed to have received a message from the golden body. Destroy Yang Kai's consciousness and occupy this body. How could Yang Kai agree? Even if he couldn't move, he tried to maintain a clear consciousness, not allowing the golden body to occupy his body. The golden body was also not afraid. Over and over again, it crushed Yang Kai's bones, tormenting his nerves, and making him faint. One had the unyielding golden body, the other had the unyielding soul. Who won and who lost would not be clear until the final moment. Yang Kai knew that this time, it was a real matter of life and death. It was not like the challenge with his brothers in the sect. If he couldn't survive, then there would be no Yang Kai in this world. Therefore, he had to survive, even if it was painful, he had to endure. Yang Kai's consciousness and the destructive power of the golden body began a difficult tug-of-war between the two, and the battlefield was Yang Kai's body. They went back and forth, neither side retreating, neither side was willing to give in. As time passed, Yang Kai was surprised to find that the unbearable pain was slowly alleviating, and he couldn't help but feel refreshed. It was no wonder. After the golden body crushed Yang Kai's bones, it repaired them again and again. In the process of breaking and then rebuilding, Yang Kai's body had the factor of the golden body. Yang Kai's bones were getting stronger and stronger, while the energy of the golden body was getting lower and lower. Under this situation, the pain was naturally alleviated a lot. Once the golden body was completely integrated into Yang Kai's body, the battle would be over. The scales of victory were gradually tilting toward Yang Kai. The unbearable pain slowly turned into tolerable, then turned into itchiness, and finally turned into comfort. This feeling was like being enlightened, making hundreds of millions of pores all over his body open involuntarily. Perceiving that the golden body in his body still had a trace of resistance, Yang Kai cursed and crushed it in his consciousness. His body finally calmed down. There seemed to be a sigh in his ears. This sigh was full of relief and a trace of relief. Chapter 6. After quietly lying on the ground for 2 hours, Yang Kai finally stood up. The torment just now had exhausted all of his strength. Recalling the events of 2 hours ago, Yang Kai felt as if he was in a dream. He couldn't believe that all of this was real. He quietly pinched himself and felt some pain. What is going on? What is the origin of that black book? Yang Kai muttered to himself, somewhat confused. When he finally calmed down, Yang Kai suddenly discovered that he was somewhat different. Originally, he didn't have enough to eat, and every 5 days he would suffer a beating. His body had always been very weak, but now Yang Kai could clearly feel that his bones contained exuberant vitality. A warm energy slowly exuded from within, giving him an indescribable feeling of comfort. With a slight movement, his bones unexpectedly emitted a crisp and melodious crackling sound, as if they were playing a tune. Moreover, his body no longer hurt, and the wounds he received from Zhou Dingjun today seemed to have completely healed. Aware of this, Yang Kai hurriedly rolled up his sleeves and lifted his clothes to carefully examine himself. He discovered that the original bruises on his body were all gone, and even the old wounds on his body showed signs of healing. But he was still as thin as a stick. He reached out and gently rubbed the wounds on his body. The dead skin rustled and rustled, revealing the new tender skin underneath. Although it wasn't like a newborn baby, it was much healthier than before. Hiss! Yang Kai sucked in a breath of cold air. He didn't expect that the golden skeleton body that merged with his body would have such a strong recovery ability. Feeling his strength again, he discovered that he was still at body tempering 3rd layer, and there was no change. This discovery made Yang Kai feel a little disappointed. Yang Kai had heard many stories of Jianghu stories and the secrets of his seniors since he was young. He knew that in this world, there were many people who were blessed with good fortune who unexpectedly had a fortuitous encounter. From then on, they leaped over the Dragon Gate and achieved supreme fame. But that was only a story after all. How many people in the world could actually have a fortuitous encounter that changed their lives? The more powerful those seniors were, the more they couldn't bear to bury their cultivation with the earth. They would always find a successor before they died. Therefore, it was basically impossible for them to encounter a fortuitous encounter just by jumping off a cliff or drilling into a cave. But now, such a thing actually happened to him. That mysterious black book definitely had a great origin, and the unyielding golden skeleton was just a fart from the Earth Lord. This could be said to be his fortuitous encounter, but it could also be said to be the inevitable result. The last 4 sentences on the first page of the black book clearly read, "Unyielding golden body, dominator bar, unyielding soul, can descend." If the black book was not obtained by him, but by someone else, they would never be able to pry into its mysteries, and would only be treated as garbage and discarded. It was precisely because he had picked it up and used it as a pillow for a year, feeling the unyielding tenacity in his body, that the secret of the black book was revealed today. In other words, this matter was indeed his own fortuitous encounter, but it was a fortuitous encounter that he obtained through his own ability. Thinking of this, Yang Kai suddenly felt a burst of happiness. As the saying goes, a beautiful woman is a gift to a hero. Where is the black book? Yang Kai suddenly remembered the treasure that he had used as a pillow for a year, and could not help but anxiously look for it, but could not find it. While he was anxious, his body seemed to faintly move, and in the next moment, the black book suddenly appeared in front of Yang Kai, and fell to the ground. Yang Kai was stunned, reaching out to pick it up, frowning for a moment, and with a thought, the black book disappeared from his hand. With another thought, the black book reappeared. This scene was like a magic trick, but Yang Kai's face was very dignified, because he actually felt that the black book could be absorbed into his body according to his thoughts. This wordless black book's material, could it be? Is it soul-suppressing stone? Yang Kai said, almost scaring himself. Soul-suppressing stone. That was a legendary treasure. Only in a place where hundreds of millions of Yin souls gathered, the 9 Yin abyss, could it absorb the power of countless living beings to form this strange stone. There was an ancient legend about this kind of thing. A small piece of black stone, thousands of miles away, no living being can approach, not even a blade of grass can grow. This was a bit of an exaggeration, a small piece of soul-suppressing stone. How could it be able to destroy thousands of miles of territory? But the process of forming this strange stone was really cruel and bloody. Any life form that got close to it would immediately die. The flowing time great emperor of this stone was also very long. The shortest was thousands of years, the longest was tens of thousands of years. The formation process would not be investigated, but once a soul-suppressing stone was formed, it was a supreme treasure. Because this thing had a very strange ability, it could be absorbed into a person's body, and it could also open up a unique space inside the stone. This space could be big or small, so it was perfect for storing things. Although Yang Kai was only a trial disciple of High Heaven Pavilion, his status was low, but his knowledge was not lacking, not to mention the legend of the soul-suppressing stone had been passed down for many years. Anyone would have heard of it. When he first received the black book, Yang Kai did not think of this. But now seeing that it could be absorbed into his body, and then thinking of the golden skeleton that appeared from the pages, how could he not recognize the black book's material? Kai Yang immediately began to sweat profusely. The soul-suppressing stone only existed in legends, it had long disappeared from the world. But he did not think that he would be able to find one, and such a big one at that. The legend said that a small piece of soul-suppressing stone, even if it was only that big, it was still priceless. But the one in front of him was actually made into a wordless black book, a foot-long, 3 fingers thick black book. This value was immeasurable. If this matter were to spread out, not to mention a trivial high heaven pavilion, even the entire Great Han Dynasty would be trampled overnight. Yang Kai could not help but feel a burning sensation in his hand. Although he was frightened, he did not forget to wipe his sweat. Fortunately, this thing could be absorbed into his body, otherwise he would be in big trouble. With such a precious treasure, Yang Kai did not dare to be careless. Like a thief, he quickly closed the door and hid in his room, his heart beating wildly. Kai Yang couldn't contain his excitement, but he was also anxious. His current strength was so low, how could he protect such a precious treasure? Although the wordless black book could be absorbed into his body, and there was no danger of it being exposed, Yang Kai was still uncertain. Only by cultivating, only by becoming strong, could he protect his own things. Thinking of the encounter 3 years ago, Yang Kai's frightened eyes gradually calmed down. He had traveled thousands of miles, wandering to High Heaven Pavilion, wasn't it all for the sake of cultivating? Since he had obtained the wordless black book, he might as well start with it. The first page of the black book gave him the unyielding golden skeleton, although he did not know what use it had, but it definitely would not be bad. Moreover, the black book had so many pages, could it only have one golden skeleton? Chapter 7. Although Yang Kai was only 15 years old this year, ever since he had experienced that catastrophe 3 years ago, his temperament had matured a lot compared to his peers. It was precisely because of that catastrophe that his tenacity and unyielding character had been tempered. So Yang Kai quickly calmed down, sat on the edge of the bed, and carefully looked at the first page of the black book. After confirming that the first page had no effect, Yang Kai slowly opened it to the second page. With his previous experience, Kai Yang's actions this time were a walk in the park. His eyes widened as he stared fiercely at the black pages. After a long time, the golden characters on the first page slowly appeared. Unyielding golden skeleton, tempered body technique. Yang Kai's mood couldn't help but fluctuate. Things were just as he had guessed, every page of this black book was probably hiding something. Almost without thinking, Yang Kai's mind was completely focused on the second page of the black book. In an instant, the golden characters on the black book seemed to have turned into living fish, jumping out of the book, turning into a sky full of golden shadows, drilling straight into Yang Kai's head. When the golden shadows disappeared, Yang Kai felt as if there was something extra in his mind. And these things were brought by the golden shadows. Calming down his excited mood, Yang Kai closed his eyes and began to digest the knowledge in his mind. In fact, there was no need to digest, the knowledge that came with the golden shadows appeared clearly in his mind. With a thought, it appeared, and he was able to understand it smoothly and freely. This is the tempered body technique. Yang Kai muttered to himself. He found that this was actually a set of fist and foot techniques. A set of seemingly simple but profound fist and foot techniques. Moreover, this set of fist and foot techniques also had a strict time requirement. It actually required the sun to rise from the east to practice. In other words, every day at most, he could only practice for half an hour. Right now, it was still early in the night, so if he wanted to wait until dawn, he would have to wait for at least 10 to 10 hours. Kai Yang had been busy the whole day, and had only eaten a single roasted sweet potato, so his stomach was rumbling with hunger. Although his body was weak and tired, after obtaining a treasure like the wordless black book, his spirit was extremely excited. For a while, he couldn't sleep, so he began to study the third page of the black book. However, to his disappointment, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't see any changes on the third page. He fell asleep while reading. When Yang Kai woke up again, it was just before the sun rose from the east. Before dawn, the darkness was the deepest, and everything was quiet. The entire High Heaven Pavilion was quiet, and occasionally the sound of insects and birds could be heard, the early birds looking for food. With something on his mind, Yang Kai quickly climbed out of bed and walked to the front of the hut. Taking a few deep breaths, he slowly relaxed his body. As the sun rose from the east, Yang Kai opened his eyes. In his mind, he had already practiced the set of fist and foot techniques from the tempered body technique countless times, so he immediately took up a familiar stance. His hands formed into palms, his movements gentle and slow, one to the left and one to the right, pushing forward, then pulling back, holding the world in his arms, rubbing all things in his palms, stepping on the earth, swallowing the sun, the moon, and the stars. His left foot stepped forward, so close was the end of the world, his right foot gently stepped forward, so close was the end of the world, but in a breath, life was full of vitality, just like 100 flowers blooming in spring. Spring left and summer came, the scorching sun was faint, and the fragrance of the lotus flowers filled the air. The autumn wind was bleak, and the golden fruits were fresh, refreshing the heart. The biting cold wind whistled, and the white snow was wrapped in silver. Yang Kai's expression gradually became dignified, and the slowly moving fists and feet seemed to be pressed by a 10,000-pound boulder. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't move. Accompanied by a crisp cracking sound, Yang Kai's face turned pale, and he suddenly staggered, almost kneeling on the ground. Although he had practiced this set of fist and foot techniques countless times in his mind, Yang Kai had never thought that the tempered body technique would be mysterious to such an extent. In that short moment, Yang Kai felt that the whole world was pressing down on him, and he could feel all the feelings of the world under this huge pressure. The tempered body technique didn't practice fists and feet, but it practiced the vicissitudes of life, birth, old age, illness, and death. It practiced the ups and downs of life, happiness, anger, sorrow, and joy. It practiced the joys and sorrows of separation and reunion, and the changes of life and death. The slow fists and feet all affected the power of the world, and were full of mysterious rules and mysteries. Just now, Yang Kai only pushed out 6 palms and took 3 steps, which was less than 1% of the progress of the tempered body technique, and it was already difficult to continue. That crisp cracking sound came from his spine, which made Yang Kai mistakenly think that his bones were broken. He hurriedly felt it, but found that there was only some pain on his back, and it wasn't a big problem. After calming his mind, Yang Kai once again took a stance, and displayed the tempered body technique's routine. Just now, Yang Kai wasn't mentally prepared, and his mind was in a trance, so he didn't feel it very clearly. This time, with the previous example, Yang Kai naturally held his breath and concentrated, and guarded his mind. Along with the slow movements of his fists and feet, Yang Kai once again felt the mood from before, and it was much clearer than before. His chest was filled with mixed feelings, and he couldn't tell what kind of feeling it was. Not only that, but as the routine unfolded, his fists and feet became heavier and heavier, as if he was underwater, difficult and obscure, and difficult to use. The cracking sounds were incessant, and Yang Kai's every movement made his bones explode like firecrackers. Piercing pain came from all over his body, but Yang Kai was unmoved, and his tenacious perseverance was vividly displayed at this moment. In the blink of an eye, Yang Kai was sweating profusely, and his hands and feet were trembling, as if the weight of heaven and earth was added to his body, making him extremely heavy. His heart was filled with perseverance. Suddenly, a warm feeling spread through his body, and the pain all over his body was alleviated in an instant. Yang Kai's spirit was greatly aroused, and he concentrated even more on displaying his fists and feet. He knew that this warmth must be from the unyielding golden skeleton. After all, the tempered body technique was a complete set with the golden skeleton. The sun rose from the east, and in front of the most remote room in High Heaven Pavilion, a youth was sweating profusely, slowly displaying his fists and feet to cultivate. The long road of martial arts began today. Half an hour quickly passed, and when Yang Kai suddenly felt his body become light, without the heavy weight on his body, he knew that he could no longer practice the tempered body technique. The tempered body technique clearly stated that one could only practice this set of fist and leg techniques half an hour before sunrise. As if all the strength in his body had been drained, Yang Kai fell on his butt and sat down on the ground. He took a deep breath, and a purple aura was sucked into Yang Kai's mouth and disappeared. In a flash, Yang Kai felt refreshed, and his body seemed to faintly move. Yang Kai was surprised, and quickly carefully felt his body. This time, Yang Kai couldn't help but be surprised. Qi sense. He actually felt qi. In other words, he had broken through the tempered body 3rd stage, and had already stepped into the tempered body 4th stage. This great news made Yang Kai's heart burst with joy. Since entering High Heaven Pavilion until now, it had taken him 3 years to reach the tempered body 3rd stage, but today, after only half an hour of practicing the tempered body technique, he unexpectedly broke through. The tempered body realm had a total of 9 stages, and it trained the body. The first 3 stages only strengthened the body, and there was nothing special about it. But after the 4th stage, the meridians would feel qi. Only after feeling qi would one be able to take a step further in cultivation. Although at this time one could feel qi, there was still no yuan qi in the body. Only after reaching the tempered body 7th stage would one's body produce a small amount of yuan qi. Only after reaching the tempered body 9th stage, when the meridians of the body were connected and yuan qi began to open, one would break through to the initial element realm and truly possess one's own yuan qi. The initial element realm was the beginning of a cultivator. Everything in the tempered body realm was to lay a foundation for the future. This foundation was not fixed, and as one's strength increased, the muscles, bones, and skin would be repeatedly tempered until they reached the peak. At this time, Yang Kai had just entered the tempered body 4th stage, and had just started to feel qi. To an outsider, this didn't mean much, but to Yang Kai, it was great news. Chapter 8. Half an hour to break through to the next stage. The effect of the tempered body technique was self-evident. Although Yang Kai's own hard work had contributed to this, without the tempered body technique, Yang Kai believed that he would have needed at least 3 or 4 months to break through. In his excitement, Yang Kai couldn't hold his breath and hurriedly spat it out. A jet black, smoke-like qi came out of Yang Kai's mouth. It was filthy and dirty, and it went straight to the ground, rolling up a layer of dust. After this exhalation, Yang Kai couldn't help but feel his whole body become lighter, and his 6 senses became much sharper. Is this the acquired impurities? Yang Kai was shocked on the spot. In the tempered body realm, every time one broke through, they would expel impurities from their body. Yang Kai had also experienced this before, but it was far from the degree of this. Countless thoughts and feelings of joy lingered in Yang Kai's mind, unable to be erased. Although this time he had directly broken through to the next stage, he hadn't been able to display the true effect of the tempered body technique. This was because after practicing for half an hour, Yang Kai had only used 1% of the moves in the tempered body technique. If 1% could bring about this kind of effect, then what would happen if he used all of it? But if he was anxious, he wouldn't be able to eat hot tofu, and if he was flustered, he wouldn't be able to touch a hot butt. After thinking deeply for a moment, Yang Kai made a plan for his future path. Although it wasn't comprehensive, it was no longer like before where he could only take 1 step at a time. For a moment, his mood couldn't help but surge. After eating a little, Yang Kai picked up his broom and began sweeping the floor. Although Yang Kai was the High Heaven Pavilion's floor sweeping servant, he didn't have to sweep the entire High Heaven Pavilion. The area he was responsible for was only 1/10 of the High Heaven Pavilion. Therefore, it wasn't too troublesome to clean up. Basically, it could be done in about 2 hours. Xianxia was standing at the top of a tree, monitoring the activities of the High Heaven Pavilion disciples. Inadvertently, he saw Yang Kai sweeping the ground and couldn't help but feel strange. Today, Yang Kai was clearly distracted. He didn't know what he was thinking, but he actually swept a certain area for half an hour without leaving. He swept the ground until it was shiny and clean, so shiny that even a mosquito would sprain its leg if it landed on it. This guy. Xianxia didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Yang Kai was indeed thinking about something. After obtaining such a great opportunity yesterday, he naturally had to think about his future. But no matter how he thought about it, he couldn't come up with a good idea. He could only cultivate for an hour before sunrise. What should he do with the rest of the time? Just as he was thinking about it, a rush of footsteps came from behind. Yang Kai quickly dodged, but who would have thought that the other person would also make a dodging action, so he bumped right into him. Nothing happened to Yang Kai, but his figure swayed slightly. The person who had bumped into him, on the other hand, felt as if he had hit a steel plate and fell to the ground with a cry of pain. The place where he had been hit was numb. Yang Kai recovered and looked at the other person apologetically. "Junior brother, are you okay?" That person was still a bit annoyed, but when he raised his head and saw that it was Kai Yang, the one who was beaten up every 5 days, his anger dissipated. There was no point in getting angry at this kind of person, and this time he was also responsible for this matter. He quickly waved his hand and said, I'm fine. As he spoke, he stood up and ran off in a hurry. Yang Kai asked, "Junior brother, where are you going in such a hurry?" The person didn't even look back as his voice came from afar. "To the contribution hall, where else?" Hearing him say this, Yang Kai suddenly remembered that today was the 8th day of the month. The 8th day of every month was the day when the sect gave out the contribution points for the previous month. Therefore, on this day of every month, the sect's logistics department would be very lively, especially at the contribution hall. Countless people would flock there, wanting to know how many contribution points they had received last month. If they had a lot of contribution points, they would naturally want to exchange them for pills, armors, and books to improve their strength. Therefore, on this day, the mood of the High Heaven Pavilion disciples would be quite excited. Some people were happy while others were sad, and Yang Kai was one of the latter. Stunned, Yang Kai counted with his fingers and couldn't help but frown. The contribution points he had received last month were as pitiful as ever. Sweeping the floor earned him 10 contribution points, but last month he had been challenged 6 times and lost all 6 battles. Every time he lost, 1 contribution point would be deducted, so he had only received 4 contribution points. This made him feel very embarrassed. Fortunately, he was now a trial disciple and his status was at the bottom of the High Heaven Pavilion. Every time he was defeated, he would only lose 1 contribution point. If it was an ordinary disciple, every time he was defeated, he would lose 2 contribution points. Thinking of this, Yang Kai felt a burst of joy. However, no matter how small a mosquito was, it was still meat. Right now, he was counting on these contribution points to maintain his livelihood for the next month. Without hesitation, he quickly swept the floor. At noon, Yang Kai finally finished his work and carried his broom all the way to the contribution hall. After a morning of buffering, the contribution hall was now very quiet and deserted. This was why Yang Kai hadn't come in the morning. If he had come in the morning, he would have had to line up, which was really troublesome. Walking into the contribution hall's attic, it was really quiet inside. Only the old man behind the counter was dozing off. The old man was the shopkeeper of the contribution hall. He was around 50 to 60 years old, with thin white hair and a kind face. He looked harmless to humans and animals, but Yang Kai knew that this old man was a genuine master. There was once an elite disciple of the High Heaven Pavilion who was acting presumptuously in the contribution hall and was sent flying by this old man's finger, almost losing his life. At that time, Yang Kai was also present. It was from then on that he knew that this old man's strength was unfathomable. Yang Kai walked forward and saw the old man sleeping soundly, snoring loudly, his mouth constantly smacking, a wretched smile on his face. This old man. I wonder which High Heaven Pavilion female disciple he is dreaming of. Yang Kai didn't find it strange. Gently tapping the counter a few times, he softly called out, "Treasurer Meng." The old man's surname was Meng, but as for what his name was, Yang Kai didn't know. He had always called him that. A few soft knocks disturbed the old man's sleep. Opening his hazy eyes, he saw that it was Yang Kai. His old face immediately wrinkled, as if he had seen a pile of feces. "What's with that look?" Yang Kai angrily asked. Treasurer Meng rolled his eyes. "Why didn't you come this morning?" Yang Kai confidently said, "There were many people this morning, so now it's quiet." Disturbing this old man's sleep, Do you know what it means to respect the old and love the young? Yang Kai leaned over and asked in a low voice, "Which girl did you dream of?" Immediately, Treasurer Meng's face lit up. Wiping his mouth, he was just about to ask Kai Yang a question when he saw the look of disdain in Kai Yang's eyes. Immediately waking up, he slammed the counter and said, "What you just asked is simply tarnishing this old man's reputation. How preposterous. Is her figure good?" "Good." Treasurer Meng's saliva almost flowed out. "Good figure, long legs, fair skin, and a slender waist?" "NNN." Treasurer Meng quickly nodded, almost treating Yang Kai as a soulmate. "Heh." Yang Kai sneered without saying anything. Treasurer Meng's face was as red as a monkey's butt. He was so ashamed that he wished he could find a hole and crawl into it. Chapter 9. In the entire High Heaven Pavilion, Yang Kai was only familiar with one person, Treasurer Meng, in front of him. After all, he had to come here once a month. Treasurer Meng had a nickname, Dreamy Skinner. Although he was only a small contribution hall treasurer, what he liked to do the most was to squeeze the contribution points out of the disciples. If the original price of the blood coagulation cream was 10 contribution points, he could sell 2 bottles for 3 bottles. His method was very simple. He simply put 2 bottles into 3 bottles. If you don't want to buy, then get lost. Of course, Treasurer Meng didn't do this kind of thing often, but only occasionally. Moreover, his targets were the rich disciples. Like Yang Kai, this kind of poor ghost, he didn't even bother to look at them. Every High Heaven Pavilion disciple's contribution points were hard to come by. How could they bear to be exploited like this? So basically, every disciple who had been cheated by him would report it to the Elder Council. Treasurer Meng had also received warnings from the Elder Council time and time again, but he still continued to do as he pleased, unmoved. However, his position as the treasurer was unshakable, and no one could replace him. Because of this, Treasurer Meng was hated by countless High Heaven Pavilion disciples. The old man didn't care about anyone, but he couldn't do anything to Yang Kai. This was because once, when he was excitedly staring at a female disciple's butt, he was caught red-handed by Yang Kai. An old man without respect. What kind of scandal was this? Being caught red-handed, Treasurer Meng felt that he had to lower his head in front of Yang Kai. It was also because of this reason that Yang Kai was familiar with this old man. The old man was lecherous and had a thick face. In an instant, he adjusted his expression and looked at Yang Kai. "Old rules?" Yang Kai nodded honestly. Treasurer Meng didn't say a word. He took out 10 silvers from the counter and threw it in front of Yang Kai, then took out an account book and recorded it. Yang Kai put away the silvers and asked, "How many contribution points do I have now?" Treasurer Meng rolled his eyes. "You save 4 contribution points every month, so every month you spend 1 contribution point to exchange for 10 silvers. Now you only have 3 contribution points left. What? Do you want to buy a bottle of blood coagulation cream?" "No, I'm just asking." Yang Kai waved his hand and muttered, "It's only 12 o'clock. Such a small amount of contribution points, it wasn't even enough to buy a medicinal herb. Treasurer Meng's expression, he whispered, "Little Yang Kai, I know that you want to use the baptizing marrow pill, but how many years do you know how long it will you save? You can always save up enough, right?" Yang Kai chuckled. Treasurer Meng was left speechless as he thought to himself, "At this rate, by the time you have enough money, this old man will have been dead for 100 years. But Treasurer Meng, there is one thing I don't understand." Yang Kai frowned slightly. "Speak." The old man put on a "consider yourself lucky, I'm in a good mood today" attitude. "How can such a precious baptizing marrow pill appear in the contribution hall? And why hasn't anyone else taken it?" "Hee." Treasurer Meng smiled proudly, "Because this baptizing marrow pill is this old man's own treasure. No one else knows about it." It's yours?" Yang Kai was stunned. He always thought that the baptizing marrow pill belonged to High Heaven Pavilion, but it turned out to be his own. No wonder this old man gave him such a high price. "Don't be angry." Treasurer Meng happily picked up the teapot on the counter and took a sip. "Although it's my own, I won't let you take advantage of me." If you want it, then you can use enough contribution points to exchange for it. This old man's nickname, Skin Ripper Meng, is not for nothing. I'll save enough. Yang Kai nodded. Treasurer Meng's expression suddenly changed. He winked at Yang Kai and whispered, I heard that you were beaten up again yesterday? Yang Kai glared at him and turned around to leave. Treasurer Meng shouted from behind, Tell this old man, don't be in such a hurry to leave. What was there to say? Old man Meng was obviously taking pleasure in his misfortune. Without waiting for Yang Kai to leave the contribution hall, old man Meng's expression suddenly became dignified. Staring at Yang Kai's back, he said in a deep voice, Little Yang Kai, go back to where you came from. High Heaven Pavilion is not a place where you can stay. Sooner or later you will be beaten to death. Yang Kai's movements paused, but he didn't turn around. He just whispered, I have no place to go. Finished speaking, he left the contribution hall. Old man Meng held the teapot with both hands and sighed, Really, why bother? Baptizing marrow pill. Hee, how could this old man have such a heaven-defying treasure? I just made up a lie to give you hope, but I didn't think you would take it seriously. Yang Kai first returned to his room, put down the broom, and then hurriedly walked out of High Heaven Pavilion. He had to go to Black Plum Town 10 miles away from High Heaven Pavilion. Today, he had used a contribution point to exchange for 10 silvers, so naturally he had to buy some food. This was something that Yang Kai did every month. Along the way, Yang Kai didn't feel tired for the first time. In the past, every time he came to Black Plum Town, his face would be flushed, his heart would beat faster, and he would gasp for breath. But today, he didn't feel anything at all, only his body was slightly warm. Yang Kai was confident that he wouldn't feel tired even if he walked another 100 miles. Was it because of the golden body? Yang Kai suddenly remembered something. This morning, when he was sweeping the floor, he was bumped into by that unknown junior brother. As a result, he was able to stand steadily while the other party was knocked to the ground. At that time, he didn't think too much about it, but now that he thought about it, it was obviously inconceivable. With his thin and weak body, when was it someone else's turn to be knocked to the ground? It was always him who was knocked flying. The more he thought about it, the more excited he became. The changes that the golden body brought to him were not small at all. This kind of change couldn't be seen in a short time. Only when he gradually grew up in the future would he be able to slowly discover the power of the golden body. Lost in thought, Yang Kai didn't recover until he reached Black Plum Town. Looking left and right, he walked along the left side of the street. Yang Kai wanted to go to a rice store. The scale of the rice store wasn't large. The owner was surnamed He, a local resident. He ran a small business, but his goods were genuine and he didn't cheat anyone. This was the reason why Yang Kai had always dealt with him. Small shops like this could be found everywhere in Black Plum Town. Black Plum Town was also very lively because within a 100-mile radius of Black Plum Town, besides High Heaven Pavilion, there were also Storm House and Bloody Battle Gang. There were also countless other small sects and gangs. However, these small sects and gangs were only small groups. Unlike High Heaven Pavilion and the other two sects, they didn't have their own territory. It was because of this place that so many cultivators were raised, that Black Plum Town was so lively and prosperous. Of course, it still couldn't be compared to a place like the central capital. After all, the central capital was the capital of the Great Han Dynasty. While walking, Yang Kai inadvertently glanced around and found a group of people gathered in an alley. These people seemed to be secretly plotting something, but one of them was very vigilant. After noticing Yang Kai's gaze, he immediately glared at him with an extremely fierce expression. Yang Kai chuckled lightly, but in line with the principle that if others didn't offend him, he wouldn't offend them, so he simply ignored them. However, what made him somewhat puzzled was that one of these people looked familiar. He seemed to be a disciple of High Heaven Pavilion. Chapter 10. However, Yang Kai didn't think too much about it. This was Black Plum Town, so close to High Heaven Pavilion. It was normal for the disciples to come here and do some activities. Not long after, Yang Kai arrived at He family's rice store. The rice store occupied 2 houses on the street. The business was very prosperous, and a worker was busy going in and out. The owner of the rice store was calculating an abacus at the counter, while the owner was greeting the customers. After waiting for a long time, the people who came to buy rice gradually decreased. Yang Kai then walked into the rice store. "Owner." Yang Kai greeted. The owner, who was about 40 years old, looked up and smiled. "Little brother, you came to buy rice again." Yang Kai went straight to the cheapest brown rice and pointed to the bag. "Give me a bag." The owner nodded. While filling the bag with rice, she nagged, "Little brother, you come to buy rice once a month. Is this enough to eat?" Yang Kai said, "It is enough." "Buy it." The owner looked at Yang Kai. "Look at your arms and legs. If you didn't have enough to eat, how could you be like this?" Yang Kai smiled awkwardly. "I also go hunting in the mountains, so I won't be hungry." The owner at the counter, who seemed to be concentrating on the accounts, didn't look up and said, "Wife, there is some old rice over there. It's just sitting there. Give it to little brother." "I will listen to the owner." The owner smiled and said, "How can this be? You are also running a small business." Yang Kai quickly waved his hand. The owner said with a straight face, "Why can't we? In any case, the old rice is full of worms and can't be sold." But the owner said that these worms are more nutritious than white rice. "You wait, I will give it to you." While talking, she walked to the back of the store. Yang Kai's heart was filled with mixed feelings. He didn't know what to say. Every time he came to the rice store to buy rice, the kind owner and the owner would give him more. They would also find some excuses, such as saying that the rice was full of worms. In fact, it was all good white rice. This made Yang Kai, who believed that there was no true love in the world, feel slightly sad. "Thank you, Uncle He." Yang Kai's voice was slightly trembling. The owner smiled and looked up. "Who doesn't have a time when they are alone? If you are hungry in the future, you can come here. We don't have much, but we have enough rice." Yang Kai lowered his head. While he was sighing, another two people came to the rice store. The only waiter in the store greeted them with a warm face. Before he could say anything, he was kicked to the ground by one of them. "What happened?" "Boss." He quickly ran out from behind the counter. Yang Kai also pulled the waiter up and looked at the two people. He saw that these two people's faces were filled with killing intent. One of them had a pale complexion and was clutching his stomach. He looked extremely weak. The other person was supporting him. He had a bare waist and a tiger's back. He was the one who had kicked the waiter. "Who is the boss?" The one who was supporting the waiter shouted. I am. Boss." He quickly responded. He was just an ordinary merchant, but the two people in front of him had fierce faces and swords on their waists. They looked fierce. At first glance, he knew that they were not to be trifled with. He didn't dare to neglect them. "Wow, you black-hearted boss. You actually sold poisoned rice to my brother. Look at him now. A strong and healthy man actually became like this after eating your rice. My brother is usually able to fight a fierce tiger with his fists, but now he is about to lose consciousness. You black-hearted boss, you only want to make money, you simply don't take human life seriously." Boss. He was so scared that his face turned pale. How can this be? How can this be?" The man shouted again. "How do I know? My brother bought some rice from you this morning and cooked a pot of porridge. After eating it, he became like this. Fortunately, I didn't eat it at that time. Otherwise, wouldn't I go with my brother to the underworld?" Bossy's forehead was full of cold sweat. He kept wiping it with his sleeve and said, "This hero, I am afraid there is some misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding? Misunderstanding your mother. If he didn't eat your rice, how could my brother become like this?" The big man shouted. Yang Kai looked on coldly and took everything into his eyes. Yang Kai was very clear about Bossy's character. He helped him from time to time and gave him things for free. How could such a kind person do this kind of thing? Not to mention that Bossy was not so black-hearted. Even if he was a black-hearted businessman, he would not put poison in the rice he sold. If this matter spread out, how could he do business in the future? Who would dare to buy rice from him? The excuse these two people found was really crude and couldn't stand up to scrutiny. Therefore, these two men were definitely here to blackmail him. But this method was a bit too vicious. It was simply to cut off his path to wealth. Although Yang Kai's body was thin and weak, he was still a cultivator. He was young and hot-blooded. Boss, he was also kind to him, so how could he stand to watch? He stood up with a straight face and said in a cold voice, "You too, what?" One of them glared at Yang Kai and became more and more irritable. Before Yang Kai could speak, Boss he quickly stood in front of him and blocked him. He gestured at him and slowly shook his head. "Uncle he." Yang Kai was stunned. "Spend money to avoid disaster." "Boss," he said softly. Kai Yang helplessly sighed. For Boss he to say these words, it was clear that he had seen through the two men's intentions. But when opening the door to do business, amiability makes money. The noise just now had attracted a lot of attention. If this continued, the reputation of the rice business would be ruined. Even if he knew that they were here to blackmail him, Boss he had to go along with them. He just wanted to quickly send these two demons away. In desperation, Boss he could only put on a smile and said, "Your brother being poisoned should have nothing to do with my rice business." Hearing this, the two men were about to get angry, but Boss he said, "But even if it has nothing to do with you, since you came to my rice business, I can't just stand by and watch. Your brother is in so much pain, I can't bear to see him like this. It's better to quickly find a doctor. Of course, if you two are tight on money, I can help you pay the consultation fee." These words clearly showed that he wanted to spend money to avoid disaster. If these two people really wanted to blackmail him, he would accept it. Moreover, Boss he's words could let bystanders infer the truth of the matter. He didn't have to worry about damaging the rice business's reputation. It could be said that he was watertight. Who would have thought that the two men didn't have the slightest intention of compromising? The one who helped Yang Kai suddenly became angry. "You black-hearted boss, do you think us two brothers are bandits? How preposterous! Us two brothers are upright and have a clear conscience. But you, this black-hearted boss, selling some poisoned rice, where is your conscience?" These words were righteous and powerful. Yang Kai listened on the side and curled his lips. "With this kind of conduct, you think you can sit upright and have a clear conscience?" Boss he was also stunned on the spot. What? Didn't these two people come to blackmail him? Just when he didn't know how to deal with it, an elegant young man walked out of the crowd. This young man was about the same age as Yang Kai. He was handsome, with red lips and white teeth. At a glance, one could see that his living conditions were 1,000 times better than Yang Kai's. The youth leisurely walked to the side of the two big men and circled around them with great interest. As he circled them, he kept smacking his lips and clicking his tongue. The others didn't understand what was going on, but Yang Kai narrowed his eyes. He suddenly remembered that on the way here, he seemed to have seen these three people in front of him. It was in that alley. The man who helped Yang Kai just stared at him, and the young man in front of him was also there at that time. Weren't these three people in a group? Yang Kai suddenly smelled a strong smell of treachery. Chapter 11. The High Heaven Pavilion disciple who had suddenly walked out of the crowd circled around the two big men several times. His expression was quite cynical and his eyes gradually filled with mockery. The two big men saw that the newcomer had ill intentions and their brows wrinkled. The one holding the man glared at him and angrily shouted, "You little brat, you're going to make this uncle's head dizzy. What do you want?" The young man smiled and stood in front of the two men. He deeply looked at the poisoned man and said, "Your face is pale, it seems that the poison isn't light." "Of course." The big man holding the man said with a fierce expression, "If it weren't for this, why would us two brothers not seek medical treatment and instead risk our lives to come here? We want to expose this black-hearted boss and let the neighbors know his true colors so that they won't come here to buy rice in the future." Bossy's face paled. He didn't know what the purpose of these two people was. Bossy could understand if they were here to extort money, but the fact that they were here to accuse him of a crime was really confusing. He couldn't see through them. While he was pondering, Yang Kai softly asked, "Uncle He, have you offended anyone during this time?" Bossy thought hard and said with a sad face, "No." "Then your rice business is blocking someone's path to wealth." Although Kai Yang was young, he had seen a lot of intrigue in this world, so he quickly thought of this possibility. A small business, how could it block someone's path to wealth? Boss, he shook his head again and again. That's strange. Yang Kai narrowed his eyes and looked at the field, trying to figure out the possibility of this matter, but he still couldn't figure it out. In the middle of the field, the High Heaven Pavilion youth suddenly sneered and shouted angrily at the pale-faced man, "Watch out!" As he shouted, he used the Black Tiger Steals the Heart technique and went straight for the poison man's heart. The surprising thing happened. The poison man, who had a dispirited expression and had been moaning endlessly since he appeared, as if he was about to step into the gates of hell, actually jumped back nimbly when the fist struck over. He had a graceful bearing of being as still as a virgin and as agile as a fleeing rabbit. The moment he moved, the pale complexion on his face instantly disappeared, and he became incomparably rosy. The onlookers cried out in surprise. They were obviously shocked by this sudden turn of events. "He's poisoned." The High Heaven Pavilion youth looked at the two big men with ridicule. "Even after being poisoned, you still have such skill. This one admires you." The two men's faces turned green and white after their scheme was exposed. It was as if they had really been poisoned. The onlookers also booed. They were not fools. How could they not know the truth of the matter after seeing this? It was unknown what purpose these two men had, but they had actually pretended to be poisoned and slandered He Clan's rice store, but had been exposed by the young man from High Heaven Pavilion. For a time, the field was filled with disdain for the two men and praise for the High Heaven Pavilion youth. This youth himself was very likable, and this time, the title of young hero was confirmed. Yang Kai faintly realized that this was a two-man play. It was a play of chivalry, helping the weak, and then blackmailing them for favors. If he hadn't inadvertently seen them together on the way here, he was afraid he would have been deceived. But why were they tormenting themselves like this? The two big men could no longer pretend. They stared fiercely at the High Heaven Pavilion youth and said, "Boy, who are you? You dare to meddle in my brother's business." The High Heaven Pavilion youth proudly said, "This one is High Heaven Pavilion's disciple, Sassafras." Hearing the three words High Heaven Pavilion, one of the big men looked quite afraid and said with difficulty, "So it was High Heaven Pavilion's disciple. No wonder you were born a dragon among men. Today, us two brothers admit defeat. Boy, I'll remember you. We'll meet again someday." These words seemed to have been discussed beforehand, making Yang Kai want to laugh. Sassafras sneered, "Farewell, I won't see you out." Now that things had progressed to this point, if there were no unforeseen circumstances, the two big men would probably leave. Then this Sassafras would be praised by everyone, especially Boss He's gratitude. But Yang Kai didn't want Boss He to be kept in the dark. Taking advantage of the two people not leaving, he quickly shouted, "You can't let them go. These people are despicable, framing a good merchant. Today it's his rice store. If you don't teach them a lesson, then tomorrow it will be Lu's clothing store and Zhang's general store." Most of the onlookers were nearby shop owners. They were just watching the show, but when they heard these words, they couldn't help but feel their hearts skip a beat. Right, how could they let these two despicable people leave so easily? If I let them go today, what if tomorrow they come to my store and cause trouble? Wouldn't I lose money and lose my reputation? At that time, I won't be as lucky as Boss He. Thinking of this, the people who were about to give way immediately stood still and looked at the two big men with an unfriendly expression. Yang Kai clearly saw a trace of surprise and panic in Sassafras' eyes. At this time, Sassafras also followed the source of Yang Kai's voice and looked at him. The two people's eyes met, and the latter immediately adjusted his expression. Yang Kai chuckled at him and said, "Junior brother, as the saying goes, do good to the end. Why don't you and I take down these two people together?" Sassafras saw that Yang Kai's body was thin and looked weak, but he actually called him junior brother. Now that his plan was ruined, he couldn't help but be annoyed. "Who is your junior brother?" Yang Kai said, "I am also a disciple of High Heaven Pavilion. I have been in the sect for more than 3 years." Sassafras was speechless. This was really his brother. Let's not talk nonsense. Yang Kai stepped forward and said with a strong sense of righteousness, "When we walk the world, the most important thing is the word chivalry. Being chivalrous is the duty of our generation. Brother, you can't let junior brother monopolize everything. Today, you and I will join hands to take down these two despicable people. We will give justice to Boss He and bring justice to Black Plum Village." His speech made the crowd burst into applause. Sassafras was very worried. He felt that he was dragged into a pirate ship by this brother he didn't know. Now, he couldn't get off even if he wanted to. The two men were also looking at them. Sassafras looked up at them and couldn't help but feel guilty. "Junior brother, let's go." Yang Kai grabbed Sassafras's shoulder and rushed straight over. "What the hell is this?" Sassafras wanted to cry but had no tears. Where did this brother come from? He really ruined my plan. But since it had already come to this point, Sassafras couldn't do anything. He rushed towards the two men and signaled them with his eyes. He signaled them to stay calm and find an opportunity to let them go. The two men nodded slightly. All of this was seen by Yang Kai and confirmed his guess. Bossy was worried that Yang Kai would be at a disadvantage, so he also picked up a weight and rushed over. He shouted, "Neighbors, old and young, don't just watch the show. Come and help these two little brothers." Since Bossy had already stepped forward, the shop assistant from the rice store also shouted to show his loyalty. He also rushed forward with an empty cloth bag in his hand. Just now, he was kicked by one of the two men, so naturally, he wanted to take revenge. Being led by Boss He, the onlookers stopped watching and all flocked over. For a moment, the front of He family's rice store was crowded with people. The two men didn't care much at first, but after seeing this scene, they were so scared that their faces turned pale. They only had time to say, "Don't hit my face," and then squatted on the ground with their hands on their heads. Welcome to Legends of Cultivation, audiobooks, where we bring ancient fantasy to life through storytelling. Follow the rise of heroes who defy fate, unlock mystical powers, and battle across celestial realms. Our audiobooks are crafted for fans of Chinese cultivation novels, filled with battles, breakthroughs, and legendary artifacts. Subscribe and be part of an unforgettable journey into the realm of immortality.